I think finding an expression for what's on the inside of you is so valuable to refuel and fill up when you are doing those things that you have to do for right now, like maybe a job that you don't like, or you're filling a role that you know is not going to be your forever role. When you have an expression or a way to express what's on the inside of you, it helps to refuel you from those things that drain you. In this episode, we are going to be discussing the importance of finding expression and what it looks like to find expression for your talents, your abilities, your gifts, your interests, the things that make you come alive and just make your soul feel alive. So if that speaks to where you find yourself right now, wanting to find expression for all that you have going on in the inside of you, keep listening. We're going to dive into this today. Hello and welcome to today's conversation. I am so excited to talk about this word expression. It is something that has come to light for me most recently in a way that it never has before. So I am so personally invested in this conversation. And I'll begin with just telling you, I have been through a season where I have felt like I don't know what brings me joy. Maybe you can relate to that. But I just went through so many weeks and months of feeling like I don't know what brings me joy. I mean, of course, my family brings me joy, things like that, but really peeling back the layers into who I am, who Dawn is outside of all those things, and what brings me joy outside of all those, the roles that I fill, the job that I do, what truly brings me joy. And I couldn't list anything. It was just, I was drawing a blank. It felt so sparse and scarce for me. I just couldn't figure it out for the life of me. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'm going through depression again, because that's a sign of depression when things no longer bring you joy. And it was a really discouraging place to be in. And honestly, I had this great breakthrough because I had a really good coaching session with my current life coach, who is amazing. I'll plug her business. She has an organization called the Abundant Life Center. Her name is Gina, and she is phenomenal. And so the outflow of that, I was just journaling out a few days ago, and it just suddenly came to me, something that brings me joy. And so this was huge and monumental for me. I was really struggling around, what do I want to build a business around, and feeling like, I don't know that it's marketing, even though that's what I have a lot of training and experience. And I don't know if it's this or that. And I just really struggled with, okay, well, what brings me joy? And of course, we all know, like, we're supposed to find our joy in Christ. And I even have talked about that on a previous episode. But what came to me as I was journaling out is so simple, but it was so profound for me. And it was expression. What brings me joy is to express what is on the inside of me. I feel like sometimes I am so full of information because I'm a sponge. I absorb information all the time. I listen to podcasts all the time. I watch YouTube. I'm like always absorbing. I'm reading books. I'm researching. I'm filling myself with information, and I have no outlet to really let that out. And when I was journaling, it was just like expression. I find joy in expressing whatever it is that God has given me to pour out, my talents, my gifts, my abilities, the information I absorb. I love expressing that through content creation, through words, through you name it. I love to do it. And the reason why this also felt super significant is because when I lived in Connecticut as a young, new wife, new mom at 18, I went into this Christian counseling office. So I was really struggling emotionally. I was struggling in my marriage. It was really hard to get married at 17 and make a life with someone that you're so different from. And so as I was sharing with her all of the struggles, one thing she said back to me that I have never forgotten, that has come back to me off and on through the years, is she's like, it sounds like you're searching for an expression for your talents and your gifts and your abilities. And when she said that, it was like an awakening. Like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. You know how when somebody says something and you're like, wow, you get it. Yes, that's exactly what it is. You know, when you have those conversations. And so that's what I felt in that moment. I felt like, yes, that's it. That is exactly what I feel like. I need to find a medium or an expression for what is on the inside of me, and I don't know how to get it out. And I've struggled throughout the years to really find an accurate representation of that expression. And so I've been busy in life. I stayed at home for several years, went to college, my life story. I'm not getting into it right now. But when I was journaling the other day and I realized my joy, a joy that I find is in expression, it was like, yes, that's it. And so I wanted to share that because maybe you find yourself in a place where you want to express what's on the inside of you and you're working in a job that doesn't really allow for that, or it's just not the place that you find yourself where you're like in your zone, you're in the fullness of who you could be. Like maybe your job just doesn't allow you to thrive and you don't feel like you identify with the work or you relate to the people or whatever it is. Maybe there's a different area of your life where you just feel frustrated because you want to be full time in the expression of who God created you to be. And you feel like you can't. Maybe you're working a job and you're trying to start side hustles. You want to monetize your purpose or monetize doing what you love so that you can leave this job that drains you. It's not your forever thing. I think finding an expression for what's on the inside of you is so valuable to refuel and fill up when you are doing those things that you have to do for right now, like maybe a job that you don't like, or you're filling a role that you know is not going to be your forever role. When you have an expression or a way to express what's on the inside of you, it helps to refuel you from those things that drain you. Now, how can you find those mediums or the things that you can express what's on the inside of you? How do you find that? What do you do? I think you can do it in multiple ways. You can express yourself through words, through communication, through art, through song, through dance, through maybe you love to cook, and the way that you de-stress and the way that you feel like you really come alive is to craft recipes and mess around with baking and tweaking recipes and putting out delicious, amazing food or baked goods. Maybe you love to sew or you love photography, but you can't do photography full time in this moment. I want to encourage you, if you feel like there's something on the inside of you, to find a way to express that in some form or fashion. And here's some of the pitfalls that I want to help you avoid when you're doing this. I don't want you to feel like you have to have a master life plan to walk this out right now in this moment. Because when we put so much pressure on ourselves to figure it all out and be able to leave the job that we hate in 2 months so we can walk this out before we ever take the first step in walking it out, we almost steal the vision back from God about just being in this playful mode of trying things out. Maybe God is wanting you to just explore this area of your life that you love, that brings you joy, but because you go into this type A mode where you feel like you have to have it all figured out, you almost rob yourself of enjoying the journey of walking it out. So I want to encourage you not to do that. I want you to come from a place of, I'm just going to take this next step. Maybe you don't have the $5,000 camera that you want to have in order to play with photography, but maybe you have a really good iPhone and you can mess with ways to utilize your iPhone. I mean, there's tons of YouTube videos or Instagram profiles that show tips and tricks on ways to take photos with your iPhone. Now you might be thinking, well, why would I invest in learning iPhone tricks if I know I really want to be learning the best tips and tricks with a Canon or a Sony or a Nikon? I don't even know if I'm saying that right. And I hear you on that. But if you don't have the money to get that big expensive camera right now, you do what you can with what you have, with what's within your grasp. And sometimes that feels like the lesser version, but it's the faithfulness of stepping forward how you can that really matters here. There's a book by Damon John that I read called The Power of Being Broke. And it was so insightful when I read this book, because oftentimes we think, oh, we've got to have the best equipment to walk forward. We've got to have all these things in place. But the truth is, if we had all the money in the world to walk out this grand plan or vision that we have for our life, chances are we would probably waste a lot of money spending money on things we didn't really need. And there is just a greediness and resiliency that comes when you don't have all the money to get started. You learn the pieces of your business that you wouldn't have otherwise learned. But what walking it out when you are broke as a joke and you don't have all of the resources is that you really learn the ins and outs of the starting points of where you're at and what it takes to build whatever it is you're trying to build. So that when you can hire it out, you're going to be able to speak from a place of experience rather than just like, hey, can you make this happen to your team member or your employee? So I would encourage you to find a way to express what's on the inside of you. Maybe it's starting a blog, starting a YouTube channel, starting a podcast. I have a friend who she will put out these amazing long posts on Facebook, and that is just the way that she expresses what God is pouring into her heart. And she's also a musician, so she sings, and she has created an event in our community, our local community, where she brings worshipers together, and she has a speaker that comes once a month, and she has this team that she has slowly started to build, and they all have a heart for this vision, and none of them get paid for it, but it's a way that they can walk out and express what God has given them and laid on their heart. And eventually, I'm sure it will get to a point where if it's their desire to monetize it, that will eventually happen. But for now, they've created this space and walked it out just step by step. And it's such a beautiful thing to watch because there is something on the inside of each of us that longs to find expression for us to pour out. And you might feel like you have nothing to offer. Like there's nothing, there's no talent that you bring, that the things that you bring to the table of life are so meaningless compared to somebody else. But that is not true. You didn't get the breadcrumbs when God was sprinkling out the talents the day that you were conceived, of all the people that were born on the day that you were born. You don't have the breadcrumbs. Like you are seated at the table at the feast, and you bring all of you to that table, and you are needed, and you have something of value to offer the world. So if you have lived in this mindset or limiting belief or lie that you don't have gifts and abilities, that what you bring to the table is less than somebody else, I want you to break off that lie right now. After this podcast is over, pause for a moment, break off that lie, and receive the truth that God wants to replace with that lie. So the other thing that you can do when you are trying to walk out in the fullness of who God created you to be, you're trying to find expression for what He's placed on the inside of you. I want you to focus on just expressing and just be in that expression with little to no expectation. And what I mean by that is really to enjoy the journey of walking it out without getting yourself too overwhelmed with what the end result's going to be, and just focus on being. Maybe you're somebody who loves art and you don't consider yourself an artist. That's okay. Go get some canvases, some paints, and just express whatever's on the inside of you on that canvas. It doesn't have to be Van Gogh or Picasso, but maybe in the art of doing that, that's going to release something on the inside of you. And that could lay the foundation or the framework for a different version of how you express yourself, but it's in that place where you allow yourself to play or just be a child again in that sense and just explore the things that interest you. I have been through so many curriculums, programs that teach you how to tap into your purpose. And one of the ones that I went through, it was so interesting, was called Destiny by Design. And it really has you look into your childhood and the things you loved as a child. And some of those things that I loved back then, I still love to this day. For me, one of those things is fashion. And I have always had a desire off and on to be a fashion designer. Now, I might not be walking that out right now, but I'll go on Instagram or Facebook and I'll do these outfits of the day. I'll put together outfits and just take a photo of them and usually tag links to the products. And before I was tagging links to the products, I was just showing like, I love the way these pieces fit together. I love how the colors play together. When I was doing things like that, and I still do that, I don't have a plan for how my outfits of the day and my fashion design dream are going to come together. I don't have that. But I'm walking out in the small, simple ways that I can, my love for fashion, finding expression for my love for fashion in that way. And so maybe you hate fashion, it's not your thing. My point is giving you an example of a simple, small, basic thing that you can do to find expression for a piece of your heart that makes you come alive. And for me, I love fashion. I love makeup. I'm a girly girl. The other thing I want you to do with this as you're taking steps towards finding an expression for your talent is I want you to journal the process. Even if it's just like you pull out a notebook and pen, or you get a journal, or you're writing it on a Word document on your computer, I want you to journal the expression of the things that make you come alive and the things that are on the inside of you. I want you to journal how it makes you feel after, how you felt before, how you felt after, what came to you as you were walking this out. Journal that, because there could be nuggets of gold in that could really help point you in the direction of your future and where you really want to go. You could even document the journey online and inspire other people to do the same thing. It's like whatever you're most comfortable with, I want to encourage you to document the journey, whether it's from your own personal standpoint of just privately, you're going to document it in a Word document or in a journal, or you're going to publicly walk out just your love of baking or cooking or whatever it is that you're doing to find expression. The last thing I want to share that you can do in finding expression, and I know I've kind of touched on that here and there in the other points that I made, but I wanted you to think about it in this way: taking steps in small, incremental, actionable ways. Because I believe if you have something that's burning on the inside of you that you need to find a way to release, because if you don't, it's just this built up with dreams and goals, and it's like a pot of boiling water. If you have a lid on a pot of boiling water, eventually that water is going to spill out and it's going to make a mess all over your stove. So if you have something that's on the inside of you that's burning and you just need to release, it's going to come out in a healthy way unless you find an expression and an outlet and a way to pour that out. So I want to encourage you to do that. And it starts with just small, simple, incremental, actionable steps. Like some of the examples I shared earlier in this episode, or maybe you're already thinking of creative ways right now on how to walk this out for yourself. So let me know if this episode was encouraging for you or if you related to anything I said. I love to hear from listeners. I pray and hope that you are inspired to find expression for the season that you're in. That's all we've got for this episode of the Called Forth podcast. One thing that would really help both us and other new potential listeners is for you to rate this show and leave a comment in iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you tune in to listen. Also, make sure to link up with us at www.dawntown.com. That's DAWNTOWNE.com. And on social media. And please just share. Share this podcast with anyone who you think might enjoy it. Until next time, remember, you have been called forth.